Hi, I'm Brittany Hall, one of the program coordinators for Yukon Extension Solid Ground Program. We are funded through a grant from the USDA BFRDP. So this next video series is all about DIY hacks on the farm. So this is things that farmers are doing to make their lives easier at a relatively inexpensive budget. So we talked to somebody about building a high tunnel for their propagation, somebody else about making their own dibbler. So things that can help you cut costs on the farm that are gonna help you out in the long run. Hi, I am Brittany Hall, a program coordinator at Yukon Extension Solid Ground, and today we are at Foliota Farm talking about DIY farm hacks. So, Melanie, can you tell me a bit about your farm and where folks can find your products?
Sure, so our farm is a regenerative, no-till flower farm. We sell flowers and herbs. We sell our flowers at the Willimantic Farmers Market every Saturday, about once a month at the Ashford Farmers Market, the Andover Farmers Market, and at Grounded in Willimantic. And we are on social media at Foliota Farm, and we have a website, foliotafarm.com.
We're talking about farm hacks. Can you tell us what it is you built and the reason you decided to build it?
Yes, so we built a very small makeshift hoop house. So we built it about 2 years ago. It was when the cost of materials was really high. We were just getting started as a farm. Most of our farm is in our front yard, so it's definitely a small space. And it helps us grow out all of our seedlings in the spring. And we were able to use materials that we picked up at Home Depot and were really cheap.
So did you come up with the idea for it on your own, or was it something that you looked to other resources to get?
Yeah, so we did not come up with this idea on our own. There's actually a video on YouTube now by Eliot Coleman, and it was originally made in 1976. So it's one of his really old school techniques that's goes over building a more formal greenhouse structure with wood and lumber and everything, and then how to do this one, which was supposed to be much more low cost.
Do you feel like there was any specific skills you needed to know before you built it?
Not really. I feel like this is a pretty basic structure considering most of it is just using rebar and tubing.
Okay.
I would say that I did some rudimentary building when I was living in South America, so squaring out the base of it I'd say is important, just making sure that everything is lined up, because once the posts are in the ground you can't go back from that. But I think this is a very entry-level accessible building project for people to do.
Do you remember how much it cost to build?
Yeah, so I'd say all the materials were about $400, not including the plastic. We already had the plastic because I'd been using it for some solarization. So, but I think with the plastic it would be maybe $600 total.
Yeah. Okay. So you're using this instead of a traditional greenhouse or high tunnel, right? And so how has having it impacted your farming operation?
I mean, without it, we probably wouldn't be able to get seedlings in the ground. It's just an essential part of starting seedlings in the spring. Yeah. So we do most of our seedlings starting inside. So we have grow lights, we start everything in soil blocks, and then it comes out here, and we end up filling the space with maybe 4,000 seedlings at a time. I use a lot of micro soil blocks, so that's what allows them to stay in here, but it just stays warm enough for them to actually get some growth and prevents them from, potentially freezing overnight.
Yeah. Do you heat it in the
We don't heat it at all, but it has, I use row cover over the benches to keep everything a little bit more insulated. Okay. So I will though put out my frost sensitive things a little bit earlier than I would otherwise.
Okay. Can you give me a quick breakdown of what materials you use and how you use them?
Yeah, so most of it is electrical conduit, which is the yellow bars that are going up and over. There's PVC that's used as a support coming down on the sides. There's also a 1.5 foot long PVC that's buried in the edges. And then going through the electrical conduit is 10-foot rebar, which we then sunk into the PVC that's buried. Okay. And then across the top, we just used a thin rope to put a small clove hitch on each one to maintain a certain amount of distance between it. Yeah. And then that is tied down to the edges with a stake. We also use duct tape in order to secure the structure at the top. What's connecting the two electrical conduit pieces is an angle PVC connector.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything was able to fit in our Subaru Forester, which is another part of, I think, what makes this just easy for us to do because we don't have a pickup truck.
So how long do you think it took you guys to build this?
Took us maybe 8 hours.
So just a day?
A day and a half, I'd say. So one day I marked everything out and figured where it was all going to go, and then the next day we built it. We built it probably in 4 to 6 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then the plastic, is it currently buried under the wood chips?
Yeah, so most of it was not buried for a while, and we found that with the rain, it would pool, and we'd actually get more mosquito issues and insects in there. So we more recently just took the time to bury it all under wood chips. It doesn't actually help keep the plastic down, but it does just prevent it from being exposed and creating lots of areas for water to collect.
Cool. And so you use it, are you going to start using it for in-ground growing as well?
We're going to try. So we just pulled out the benches on this half of it because we're planning on building another hoop house with an old carport that we got in our backyard. And then we're going to try to grow some things in here that just really like the summer heat, and then also potentially for overwintering some flowers. We'll do some trials this year.
Cool.
It's a small space, but it'll be something.
If you could go back and change how you did this originally, is there anything that comes to mind that you would do?
Yeah, so definitely where this electrical conduit meets up with the angle, we just used duct tape to wrap it together because we thought maybe it would be more of a temporary structure that we'd be taking apart and putting back together. But with the UV exposure from the sun, that degraded pretty quickly, and in the spring with some wind, a lot of those came apart, and then the rebar was able to go through the roof of the structure, punching holes in it. So what we would do next time is probably just use plumbing adhesive and just get them actually to stick together right at the start. We had to make some changes originally. This design was from Eliot Coleman, and he originally used greenhouse clips along the sides, something that we had to do because the plastic started to just lift off of it after the first day, was reinforce it with cinder blocks on the side so that the plastic is actually held down. He originally just buried it like 6 inches under the ground and then just put dirt on top of the plastic additionally to hold it down. So we also were able to use the cinder blocks to weave some string in and have it go back and forth over the structure like a normal greenhouse would. Our soil is really, really sandy here, so we also had to dig it like 1.5 feet deep, whereas in the original video I think it only has them digging it about 6 inches deep. We found that with the rebar, because it's like you're bending it and it's bowing out, so it just tries to pop out of the soil really quickly. Also, I think we would maybe, instead of using cinder blocks, get more of ground anchors and try to do more of a traditional like hoop house structure so that we could pull up the sides to get a little bit more airflow. We got cinder blocks at the time because it was cheaper, but that's something I would change about it.
Do you have any other future DIY projects planned for the farm?
Yeah, so the next project we're going to try to do is a walk-in cooler. So we don't have any cooler yet on the farm, and it's just essential for storing flowers and herbs long term. So we're going to be trying to build that in the back, maybe with like a basic shed structure, and then insulating it and using a cool box.
So do you have any advice for other farmers who are thinking about making something like this, or just building something in general on their farm?
Advice would be, I would say just kind of go for it. Like, I think building things for your farm is pretty important as a farmer. You know what you need best. So in terms of advice for this structure though, I'd say just take the time to measure things out correctly and, you know, get all the supplies at once. Because sometimes we were going back and forth to the store like 4 times when we realized we forgot things.
Well, thank you so much for having us. So cool to see what you guys built and visit your farm.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Let me know if you have any more questions.
Thanks.